Hello and a very warm welcome to another episode of Causonomics, with myself, Jo Causon, in conversation with business leaders, industry experts and influencers on what is really driving the UK service economy. In this week's episode, we are moving into the travel industry, something I certainly love and indulge in as much as I possibly can. And I have the pleasure of sitting down with none other than the brilliant Dame Irene Hays, CEO of Hays Travel. I was very excited and also honoured to talk to Dame Irene about her incredible career and how she has grown and differentiated Hays Travel in an extremely competitive market. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. So welcome everybody, and today's podcast we're in for a real treat because we have today with us Dame Irene Hays. She is of course the owner and chair of Hays Travel, one of the top 100 companies to work for in the UK, and has been a champion and supporter of young people. She has a charitable arm of her business, the Hays Travel Foundation, which was founded back in 2015 to help young people achieve and be the best that they can. I know this is a particular passion for you, Irene, too, in their health, sport, the arts and education. Irene also set up Hays Travel Independence Group over 30 years ago, which was about really driving entrepreneurship in the UK in both travel and tech. What an amazing career, and well deserved to be a dame and awarded the honorary doctorate. Just an amazing all-round brilliant businesswoman in the UK. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined with Irene today, and a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
So Irene, you have touched many parts of different businesses, different backgrounds, different experiences. And I know you are particularly passionate about the importance of service, something that we share, given the fact that 80% of GDP in the UK is driven out of services and over 60% of the workforce work in some form of related customer-facing role. So what more can we be doing to drive up the importance of customer service? Because we've talked before and said that many European countries, service is really seen as a profession and as a great career. What's your thinking, Irene, that we could do to try and drive that further?
Okay, well, first of all, it's hugely important to the success of Hays Travel. When we set up the company 43 years ago, we had a fixed vision that we wanted Hays Travel to be the most profitable independent travel agency in the UK through valuing our people, our customers and the communities where we operate. So customer care and customer service excellence is at the absolute heart of everything that we do. On a national level, in order that customer services can take the place that it should have, it really needs to be given more importance and more focus at the top tables of government. I travelled extensively, unsurprisingly, given the business that I'm in, and we are hosted by government representatives from other countries on a regular basis. They are very senior politicians indeed, particularly in places such as Spain, but even Balearics. They will have ministers sent to represent the interests of their country in relation to the quality of the customer service that they provide. It is perceived as a very important part of the community and of the economy. As far as I'm able to ascertain, that is backed up, for example, by training in the professionalisation of customer care as a long-term career. So the education system, the college system and the university system are all vested in producing the very best customer service professionals that they can. So it is a whole system approach to making sure that where more jobs are emerging, and you've just identified that now the majority of jobs in the UK are in the service sector, where it is clear that that is the case, then the other infrastructure to support the professionalism of the industry should follow. At the moment, I don't think that's happening. I still think that, quite rightly, pharmaceuticals, the automotive industry, advanced manufacturing have a greater focus than the service industry. And it would be good in the portfolios of our ministers if they could raise the importance of the agenda of service.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And certainly, as you know, at the Institute, we're really campaigning for this and really championing the whole concept of service as a profession, and agree, right from where that starts, right at school, all the way through your frontline jobs, but also to some of the very top jobs that we're now looking to, because those skills, those capabilities which customer service professionals have are going to be the bedrock of the future in terms of attracting people to invest in this country, but also to stay in this country and to grow our own businesses here. So definitely massive agreement with that. And I agree too that it needs to have a greater focus from government, but also from business as well. And you've championed this all through your life. I mean, tell us a bit about Hays and why you set it up. It's a great story, I know, Irene, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear from you about that. Why you set it up and what motivates you and drives you, because you've had massive growth, you're acquiring lots of organisations, but you still keep very true to your fundamental vision and principles and values. Now, in a world where it's pretty demanding at the moment, tell us a bit about how you do that.
Well, after John came back from university, there wasn't a lot of money around, and his family were living in Seaham in County Durham. His father was a joiner at the local colliery. John was also always entrepreneurial and wanted to set up his own business, and in a way it wouldn't cost a lot of money and where his dad could help him. They looked at two options, one of which that we would start an undertaker's business or that we would start a travel business. Thank goodness they chose the latter. So his dad made, in the back of his mum's baby wear shop in Seaham, what looked like a fish and chip shop counter in the back of the shop. And then he had a garden trellis, those crisscross garden trellis, separating the baby grows and the pants and the vests, which were at the front. And then at the back, there was a counter and some brochure racks. And at the start, the business sold buttons and pontins and exotic trips on buses to Edinburgh and York. And then decided to branch out and see if we could have a license to sell holidays overseas. So contacted ABTA, the Association of British Travel Agents. And at that time, 43 years ago, we didn't have emails then. So we wrote a letter and said that we'd like to sell holidays overseas, and inspected the premises. And then 2 weeks later, we received a letter saying, no, you can't. So we wrote back 2 weeks later. They wrote and said, because you haven't even got your own main entrance. So we wrote back and said, is that the only reason? And they said, yes. And we said, well, it's come to our attention that it's a shop in London called Harrods. And in the back is a travel agency called Thomas Cook. Could you please explain the difference? And they said, okay, you can sell foreign holidays. And that's where it all started, with one stall and 3 people. And it's grown a bit since then. So we currently have about 4,700 people. And the turnovers changed significantly too. But it was always a family values-based business, and still is to this day.
So tell us a bit about that. How have you maintained that, Irene? Because I do know this is something that's very important to you. I know that you work very hard to be very visible with all of your colleagues. I know that you care deeply about all the elements of the service chain, and you are always leading from the front in that sense. But tell us about how you've maintained that, because when you acquire lots of new organisations, bringing them on board, taking them through the Hays route and travel, if you like, is not easy to do, isn't it? So tell us about how you choose those organisations and how you embed them.
Okay, well, first of all, I have a fundamental belief that the person who is standing or sitting in front of the customer, irrespective of who that customer is, be it internal or external, is the single most important person in the company at that point in time. So if I have a colleague who's sitting in front of someone who wants to buy a holiday in Devon, and my ability to influence that customer is zero. At that point in time, they are the person with the ability, the skills and the talent to sell that customer the holiday that they want. I believe that that happens within the internal market as well. So if we have somebody in our retail support helping a colleague who is trying to arrange complicated land-based then cruise, then another land-based holiday thereafter, they are the most important person. There is no hierarchy in Hays Travel. Anybody who is paid a wage or a salary. So the fundamental belief is that everybody who is being paid a wage or a salary is fundamentally important to the customer and to the business and needs to be valued. So that shines through. And I won't sing the jingle, but we have a very well-known jingle, and it's called Smile, Hays Travel. Nobody offers you more, which we have had verified through all the advertising standards and convinced them that nobody does offer anyone more. But the Smile mnemonic, SMILE, has always been part of our marketing campaign, so naturally we chose it. And the values that it describes are supportive, motivational, innovative, loyal, and excellent. And for each of those, we are explicit about the way that we will support each other to succeed, the way we will work as one team. And I know that's an expression which is bandied about a lot, but it's true. But to start with, you fundamentally have to believe that everybody who's sitting in front of a customer is the most important person, because they can do things that I never could, and maybe there's one or two things I could do that they couldn't, but were equally valuable. Perhaps that's where some bigger corporate organisations lose their soul. Each of our directors and our senior leadership team do back to the floor days, and because I can't sell a holiday, it saved my life. I generally found myself making cups of tea for the customers. I did clean out the teacup cupboard in the shop that I went to, and they still had some sticky marks on the floor where during COVID there were screens, so they said, we'll never get those off, and I went, see about that. So on my back to the floor, I literally was back to the floor, and I spent 3.5 hours on my knees getting sticky marks off, which had been the separation between the desks. And there was a photographer who took a picture, and I got an email to say, I bet you only got down on your knees for the photo. And the manager and the staff said, oh no, she didn't. So it's something which is really important. And I hope my people know that they're cherished and valued because they're important. It's a very simple thing. I don't think it's a very sophisticated answer.
No, but it's a very honest answer, and it's in your DNA. That's what you're really talking about. It's the leadership that you are bearing to others. And I think it's really fascinating about the fact that actually it's really putting the customer at the heart of your business, but your people at the heart of that business too, because they are serving that customer. And it goes back to where we started the conversation, that it's actually quite a privilege to serve. And in the UK, I think sometimes we forget that. It's our ability to be able to help or enable somebody else. Nothing makes us feel better either, does it, than being able to unlock a problem, solve someone's issue, be able to create an experience that makes their life better. I think that's an intrinsically really important thing and a really valuable lesson for us all. So that's really interesting about how you've kept those values, how that down-to-earth commitment to your colleagues and to your customers is very clear. And you can see that throughout that experience. And not all organisations do that, particularly when they grow. So that's very powerful in terms of understanding that. And clearly it works, because the economics of Hays Travel have also the growth that you've achieved, everything else. That simple message about linking employee engagement, customer experience to financial outcome. Hays is a really good example of being able to demonstrate that. I also think, Irene, something that I know you are very passionate about and have campaigned for, worked very hard at, a number of the foundation that you created is about young people and about bringing that talent through young people. Tell us a bit more about that, why you feel that is so important and how that drives you and the work that you do.
I suppose it's because I had an epiphany when I was very young. I went back to work in Sunderland in the late 1970s and went onto a management development programme. And one morning, a cold, wet morning in Sunderland, in the vehicle maintenance depot, in a gas office next to the canteen, I was part of a panel being given the opportunity to understand how you terminated someone's contract or employment. So at the time it was called a YTS scheme, and there was a young guy called Gary. Gary had a problem. He quite liked to drink, and he had a problem getting out of bed in the morning, and he had an informal verbal warning. He'd had a verbal warning. He'd had a written warning and a final written warning, and he still had problems getting into work on time. So I was sitting there trying to understand how one carried out an interview, and there was a supervisor from the vehicle maintenance depot on one side, HR representative in the middle, and me on the left. Gary came in with his mentor, a guy called Ted, and HR professional went through all of the details with Gary. Gary was wearing a big puffer jacket and chewing gum. After she'd finished, she said, "So, unfortunately, as a result of having gone through all due process," and Ted interjected and said, hang on a minute, have you never had a drink? And have you never been late for work?" And she sat up very straight in her seat. And Ted said, "I'm telling you, this young lad's got a talent. And if you give him just one more chance, just give him another chance, I'll make a decent mechanic of him. He's a talented lad when he's here." So she said, "Go and sit outside in the canteen." Then when the door closed, she turned to the supervisor, and the supervisor said, I don't know. Been given every chance, that lad. Every chance." And she turned to me and she said, "What do you think, Irene?" I said, "I just love Ted. Can we just do this for Ted and give Gary another chance?" So we came back in. She really tore a strip off Gary, really gave him a good talking to, and went through all of the steps that we'd taken. And she said, and simply as a result of Ted, him really fighting for you, we're going to give you this one more chance. So off they went. Anyway, about a week and a half later, I bumped into Ted in the Civic Centre. And I said, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll tell you a story." He said, after that meeting, he said, "I went down the back of the depot, and Gary had his head on his arm, and he was leaning against the back of the depot wall, and his face was wet. And I said to him, 'What's wrong with you? You never had a telling off before?' And Gary said, 'Oh, I've been told off plenty. Haven't ever had anybody stick up for me though.'" And for me, that was a case, one single case, where I just saw that the opportunity, and I do know that Gary went on to great things. He actually left the council and went to run a bus depot for the local bus company and was a very good mechanic. And since then, I have looked at various people in Gary's situation, came out of school and encumbered by qualification. Perhaps the education system didn't suit him at all, but somebody believed in him and somebody mentored him to the extent where at that point in time, the light bulb went on and he said, "If I'm going to do something with my life, I'm going to do this." So I loved the YTS scheme and all of the various iterations of apprenticeships. And this year we have 631 apprentices, but it's not all on the goodness of my heart. It's because they play a hugely significant role in the success of Hays Travel. They really, really do, for a variety of reasons.
Just to capture that moment, a very powerful story, Irene, about compassion, being prepared to take a risk too. And, so often in businesses, particularly in today's world where we have a lot of, laws and structure around things and focus about doing what you saw, and what Ted saw was that ability, real innate ability in somebody, and to take that and to harness that, but to take risk. Because you took a risk, Ted took a risk, and sometimes we have to, don't we? And in a world which is much more challenged, I think still remembering that and betting on the right people. But tell us a bit more about the apprenticeship.
I probably started using handheld devices when I was about 30 years old, and they were the size of a brick. Today, 84% of babies under the age of 9 months in the developed world will use a handheld device. The young people that I employ today, those 631, we do have some older apprentices, but the young cohort is 631. They have been using social media and are very familiar with the digital world, how it works, Instagram, TikTok. I've just judged the latest cohort's TikTok recruitment campaign. They know much more about that than we do. And within Hays Travel, social media is vitally important. It really is the number one route to market, as are increasingly social influencers, YouTube. So the marriage of having young people who have grown up in this world with experienced travel professionals is vitally important. And basically, they teach each other. We learn an inordinate amount of things from our young people, and we know that they learn a lot from us. Before we acquired Thomas Cook in October of 2019, 42% of our senior managers started their lives as apprentices. And when my husband John died in 2020, I appointed as the Chief Operating Officer someone who had started his life as an apprentice at the age of 16 in Hays Travel, worked in a store, was clearly very successful at that, came into head office, and has an absolute raw intellect, particularly around number, put him through his accountancy qualification. He is phenomenal, very well regarded nationally. So he was appointed, and 3 weeks ago he completed 20 years of service with us, and at the ripe old age of 36, he is the Chief Operating Officer of the largest independent travel agency in the UK, and it's well deserved. He did that. All we did was given the right environment for that to happen.
So the right opportunity. You took some decisions and some choices early on. I think it's really interesting what you're talking about learning as well, and the brilliance of learning from new and more mature and taking that through that journey. But also you've given structure to lots of people so that they can achieve. And I think this whole sense of, in a world which is really challenging at the moment, in a country like ourselves that needs to grow, you've clearly demonstrated there, Irene, the ability inside Hays. The sky's the limit. You can start right at the front and move all the way through. And I think that's the great thing around service-related roles. And I think going back to where we started the conversation about why service is so important to the growth of the economy and to many of our businesses, because there is a genuine opportunity to see real development in people and to achieve that.
Yeah, I think as well, as we move towards artificial intelligence, which all of the young people in now, pretty much our whole workforce, have embraced. And there is a lot of learning around emotional intelligence that people coming out of schools and colleges perhaps need to relearn. Many of them have the misfortune of spending 2.5 years in their bedroom trying to keep up with their classwork remotely. That's really tough, and we need to make sure that we compensate for that. But the ability to relate to other people when you're a travel or any customer service professional is vitally important. And again, that marriage of artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence will be increasingly important. I was speaking to the new cohort of apprentices who think it's very cool not to smile. So I say to them, it's part of who we are. And as I walk into work in the morning, I smile and say morning to everybody. And if I have an apprentice who's trying to look really cool, they're not going to get away without smiling back. And at the end of the apprenticeship session, I smile at everybody around the room. We fish the entire audience in the room and make sure they all smile before I leave.
And I do agree, Irene, the marriage of being able to use AI and EI is absolutely the future. when we think about customer service professionals, they will have the ability to be hugely empathetic, connected, and all those emotional things which we need as human beings, but also utilizing brilliant technology to make us more efficient, more effective, and to drive some of those changes. And smart organizations are really working out how to deploy both, not either or. And how we learn that, grow that, and develop that will mean that the customer service professional of tomorrow will be very different to the customer service professional of 10 years ago, of now. And that growth, that ability to be able to do that, I think is fundamentally critical in how we develop the service profession.
Absolutely. I'm often asked, do I think that there'll be a future for travel professionals as artificial intelligence develops? It's very difficult for me to envision a situation where, for example, one of my assistant managers had 2 elderly folk who were going on their last cruise. The husband was not in particularly good health, but wanted to go on the last cruise. And they brought their passports in to have photocopies taken. And I'm sure you know what's coming here. So the wife's passport had run out and they were due to travel in 2 weeks' time. So the travel consultant went on the website, took a copy of the passport application form, and their faces dropped. They just couldn't countenance going through all of the bureaucracy, sending away the passport. And she was going on a hen do in London at the weekend, and she stood for 4.5 hours outside the passport office and got a passport for the woman. And they bought her a box of milk tray. Which was very, very lovely, but more importantly, they got to go on their cruise. Now, I think we're way away from artificial intelligence doing that, but I could be wrong.
Absolutely, Irene. And it is that going the extra mile. And it's back to where you started this conversation about nothing is more important than the customer that's sat in front of you. And that thinking out the box, that problem solving, that and the fact that you have colleagues in your organisation that think that way, care as much as they do, will always mean that Hays Travel will be enormously successful.
Makes me very, very, very proud. They say if you employ great people, you'll get great service. And we employ great people.
And you choose well. And that's the important part of that too. And train and develop well. So we've talked a bit about why young people are important, why they're important to you, why they're important to Hays, why they're important to the UK economy. We've touched on technology and how that is developing and the hopefully happy alliance between AI and EI. We've also touched on what we want from business and government in terms of really getting behind the service industries and really acknowledging and recognising that this is a profession and we need to really stand up for the profession. So I think there's so much to do on that. And actually, I'm thinking about at the moment the service university and how we're going to try and develop that and get that off the ground. So some exciting developments on that side too from the Institute. Is there anything else we haven't covered that you feel particularly passionate about that you would like to either share with other business colleagues or indeed government or other stakeholders, given we are at quite a challenging time and we've got a lot to do? But I get the sense from you that there is real positivity, there is real opportunity, and I always feel that when I have the pleasure of spending time with you, and real opportunity to galvanise UK PLC. But what 1 or 2 things do you think we could really do?
So I think there's been a lot of talk recently about business growth, and I think businesses are pretty similar to apprentices, that if you have a business person or even someone who's come straight out of college or school and has a great idea, that business also needs to have arms wrapped around them and to be given as much practical help as they possibly can be so that they can bring their idea to fruition. You mentioned at the outset that one arm of the business is the Hays Travel Independence Group, where independent individuals who trade under a completely different name have an opportunity to come in and let us know what their business proposition is. In Sunderland, in our head office, our lovely colleagues there will deliver perhaps the legal work, the bonding, make the supplier payment. So to use an example, we have a very successful business that just does weddings and honeymoons. And they're very good at carrying out all legal requirements in countries around the world so that people can take their family and go and get married in sunnier climes. And we make sure that their bills are paid on time, that they satisfy the UK legislation, because we have lawyers and accountants and support people who can do that. I think that is truly analogous with how we help young people to thrive and flourish. And we in Hays Travel have helped young entrepreneurs. I'm thinking of 2 young men who came in to talk to John and I would say 18 years ago, with an idea. This year they'll turn over about 150 million in total transaction value. Even if those businesses then go on to do the services that the Independence Group are providing for them, and they can have the financial wherewithal to do that on their own, we're very proud and would continue to support them. I don't see that infrastructure being developed very well either. At the moment, I think there's a lot of rhetoric about big ticket investment and private equity. I think we need to look at both sides of the scale of businesses and how, if you do have a young entrepreneur, they're not looking for 100 million in private equity who want to take 45% of their shareholding. They're looking for an organisation that cares about their idea and will give it the very best chance to succeed. I think that gap needs plugging.
Absolutely. So how we nurture good ideas, put your arms around it, structure that and help it to really flourish, and how we develop our people to also support that. So that we have this sense of, whether you're a small business, scaling small businesses, enable them to get bigger as well, to see how they grow. Because I guess if you think about Hays started as a small business and then has grown to be how successful you are today.
Yes, we had help. We'd never ever had any debt. We acquired Thomas Cook without taking any debt. And as we sit here today, we made 4 more acquisitions last year. We have no debt. We pretty much learned through having the scars ourselves about what it takes to build a business, and the ups and the downs and the good things that happen. But there's also always humps and bumps along the way, where you just need somebody to pick you up, dust you down, and say, you're doing fine. This is perfectly normal. What we need to do is perhaps a bit of financial help here, perhaps a bit more training there, whatever it is. I don't think that that's rocket science. And for the last 30 years, we've done it and have made many people, we haven't made them, we have supported them to become millionaires.
Yeah.
And that's really joyful work. But if that could be scaled on a national scale, I think that would be very good for the UK, very good for the economy, very good for young entrepreneurs who came up with the idea in the first place.
Irene, it's such a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you. And I'm really struck by a number of core themes, whether that was Gary, taking the risk on Gary, taking the risk on the young entrepreneur, but supporting them. It's not just about taking that risk. It's about putting our arms around them, to use your words. It's about nurturing. It's about being clear, being focused, and it's about putting the customer at the very heart of your business. Irene, thank you so much for your time today. And I really do hope that some government officials are listening to our podcast and can really kind of build on many of the things that you have been talking about. I'm not going to be allowed to get away without finishing today to ask you one last question. One single business change or change that business leaders can implement today to change the future of customer service. What would your one line be on that?
It's going to be more than one line. It would be, tell everybody how important it is. Tell the people who are doing it how important it is to you and how much you appreciate what they're doing. And then make sure that you back that up with the very best training, the very best support that you possibly can. That will pay dividends, not just on the bottom line, but in terms of their quality of life and the future success of business.
Dame Irene, thank you. Absolute pleasure, as always. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Well, what an insightful and enjoyable conversation. I'm always struck by Dame Irene's passion and empathy, as well as her considerable business acumen, all of which contributes to the continued success of Hays Travel and the communities that she works in and serves. Join us next week, where I'll be talking to yet another prominent and decorated business expert, Sir John Timpson. He will be joining me to discuss how his unusual approach to management creates a level of service that keeps Timpson consistently at the top of the UK Customer Satisfaction Index. Until then, go careful.